Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Guilty, where we look at games, movies, or whatever else strikes our fancy, then decide in our opinion whether it's good, bad, or a guilty pleasure. We're your hosts, Kit.
And they're on.
Well, it's back down to Pandora we go in the sequel to Borderlands.
Borderlands 2.
Released in September 18th, 2012 in the United States, September 20th for Australia, and September 21st everywhere else, Borderlands 2 was built using the Unreal Engine and once again developed by Gearbox Software and published by 2K Games, which has released and re-released this game in a few packs that carry the DLC characters, skins, and other goodies, which finally settled with the handsome collection on PS4, Xbox One, and Steam.
Our history with the game is kind of short. We played the first game, we liked it, we bought the second game.
Graphics this time have definitely been cleaned up and fixed in a lot of points on the game, from what it feels and looks like. For one part, the edges that would catch you when driving have now been smoothed out a lot, so you're not stuck on a single rock for no reason. Maps also got an upgrade with how the areas differ. While Borderlands 1 you'd have rocky deserts and a snowy mountain, 2 has that and waste pits, old western towns, ice caverns, factories, zoos, and much more variation, allowing you to port into one area and be like, oh, I know where we are. True, you could in 1, but these areas just pop more. Guns also got an update, which I think makes them look a lot better than from 1, but at the same time they do suffer from having the parts kinda look the same with just a different color palette on them. Though that's not just to say you don't get some interesting combos from it.
Visually, there are a couple things of note about Borderlands 2 against Borderlands 1, some of which is good, some of which is bad in my opinion. Starting off with the good, I would say the game runs better. That might seem like a weird thing to say, but Borderlands 1 sometimes would have some odd moments of frame drops. These were actually fixed in the Enhanced Edition. In Borderlands 2 though, these frame drops don't seem to at all be a problem. The game runs smoother and looks better in almost every way. Lines are more pronounced, guns are more colorful, and characters are more defined. The UHD Visuals pack enhances this even further and makes the game look even better. The bad I would point out is kind of a nitpick when compared to the first game. The gun selection. In this case, a large portion of guns the player picks up will be very similar to one another. There isn't nearly the selection that Borderlands 1 felt like it had visually. Some gun types kind of feel neglected with their styles as well, such as revolvers. In the first game there were some that had big modern looks or even some futuristic military looks or even Old West styled revolvers. In Borderlands 2, on the other hand, most every revolver has a very similar shape, with the exception mainly being Jacob's revolvers, which have an almost cartoony design to them rather than the Old West style from the past. All in all, the revolvers seem to have changed from variety to futuristic blocky shapes, with the exception being a still blocky semi-western theme. Shut up! Story-wise, the game has improved over Borderlands 1 in a few ways. For one thing, there's actually a story. Now, what I mean of that is less insulting than I make it seem. Borderlands 1 had a story. Most of the story was small, straightforward, and more just a means of directing the player where they should be going next. That is fine, but for the most part, it is ignorable after the first playthrough after you've learned the details to it. Borderlands 2, on the other hand, is when the comedic aspects and personality that characterizes the series really seem to be enhanced and added into the series. Borderlands 1 gave us small hints of humor. Borderlands 2 comes off as, for the most part, a lighthearted game taking itself as serious as an amnesiac clown looking in the mirror.
Oh, right. I was supposed to be studying the effects of these E-Tech guns on bandits. Right now it looks like if you shoot them a lot, they die. Or did I mention I don't have a medical license?
The game does have some serious moments, of course, but all things considered, the series took a bigger turn towards just having joking scenarios as the common personality of the series here. As well, though, sprinkled in will be serious tone scenarios, including people being treated horribly, attempts to kill off creatures which were implied at the time to be peaceful, which at the time of the player's arrival are not so peaceful anymore. As well as death of characters players may actually care about. Also, we shoot a guy in the face.
Shoot me in the face! In the face! Do it! Shoot me in the face! Face, 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 face! Now! Bullets in the face!
Though the game has its issues with some aspects and shows that some of the story seems to have been changed, an example I would point to would be the awkward lead-in to the Zaffords and the Hodunks. After you destroy the Zaffords distillery, when they call you in to complete the job for them, they start out stating they want your help due to the destruction of their distillery. Then proceed to try to get you a drink. Then proceed to complain that someone blew up their distillery. Early on, I thought this could just be them being forgetful, but the more the scene happened, the more it started to seem less on purpose and more a change to how the quest starts.
Ah, a new recruit! Welcome to the Zafford family. You didn't see the bastard who destroyed my distillery, did ya? Let me get you a drink.
Got the money, I'll save your gall-darn life.
Damn it! It's dry! Those Hodunks destroyed my distillery! That's it! The truth is off! You, Vault Hunter, let's talk.
I love the story that happens for Borderlands 2 so much. While Borderlands was a good game, it was more drive here, pick up quest, run and shoot whoever, run back, get gun, and hardly care. But in 2, you have that, but the people you interact with make the missions all the better. One of my favorite missions was for Tiny Tina, a little girl who's a demolition expert that lives by herself in one of the areas, and you help her collect some things for a tea party, then round up one more thing. A psycho called Fleshstick, in which she tortures him into basically saying why Tina's all alone with no parents is all because of him, then kills him and gives the best line I feel.
Best tea party ever.
So many people interact with the player or players in this game, but one of the majors is the main bad guy of the game, Handsome Jack. A man who owns the Hyperion Corporation and wants to bring order to Pandora by killing everyone and thing on it. He constantly taunts the players and is the main story focused of the game, unlike the mash of people in 1, where they were just there for a second and then dead. Jack, on the other hand, sticks around and feels like he's actually a threat.
The recruit's making you look like idiots! Slabs, get 'em!
So much of this game has been improved from Borderlands 1. Movement, enemies, quest, items, everything. To start off with it, movement has become a lot easier, as in 1 we weren't able to move throughout the map without being hampered by a sticking out ledge on something we wanted to jump over, or the jump just wouldn't work fully. But in 2, those problems got fixed. There's also a lot more enemy types in this one in the form of the Beast of Pandora. 1 had a nice amount of them, of course, but that just felt more like they were using the regular bandits than anything else. While 2 will toss all different kinds of beasts along with new bandits. My favorite are the new Goliaths, because you can just snipe their helmet off and watch them kill everything as they go berserk, and level up and become stronger till everything's dead, and then clean them up for a little better loot, which is especially useful for the ones who carry a chest on their back, allowing for a better drop inside it as well. The quests. There are so many different types in them, and not only that, so many in general. While in 1 you could beat it in like 8 hours, 2 you need to put in time to beat every side quest by just how many there are. Plus, to add on to that, some have some extra conditions where someone may want the item you're collecting brought to them instead of the original quest giver, giving a different reward if picked. Though by the time you're doing that, you most likely have bought something from the stores that's way better than what they're giving you. Loot I don't have much trouble with other than there's no longer an official masher. There's guns like it, but not as great. Though the one thing they did add is a new element type called Slag, where if you shoot an enemy with this weapon and hit it with another type, it will increase the damage done. There is also iridium bars, which can be traded to increase your ammo for your weapons, and carrying size for your backpack, or to fight a special boss once you're done with the main storyline as well.
The gameplay is improved over the first game in most every way. It would be hard to argue that, except for one small part I'll get to in a moment. Starting out, guns feel better and most guns have functional iron sights now. I haven't once felt like muzzle flash was blocking my view, and the special attacks of each Vault Hunter feels a little more entertaining to try. As well, their skill trees feel more beneficial than those of Borderlands 1. Quests are increased substantially over the first game. Just doing side quests as they pop up made the game clear the 14-hour total of the first game pretty easily. As well, the quests were varied enough to not seem repetitive while completing them. But while that is the case, some also didn't really make sense. An example I would point to would be a mining operation that went from stopping an iridium mine to robbing a train. We don't need the money, and the money was a minuscule amount, so it just seemed to be slapped on to make it a little different from simply killing at a mine. As I said prior, most every way the gameplay was improved. One way it wasn't is loot drops, or more specifically, variety of the loot. In Borderlands 1, you could get a Torg shotgun with a Vladov magazine and a Maliwan stock. The thing would have explosive rounds and a massive magazine. Such potential is more or less limited now. While this problem can be semi-mitigated by playing until you are on insane levels of difficulty with guns constantly growing in the process, you'll never have a Torg shotgun with Vladov levels of magazine capacity because Vladov will always have a larger magazine. While this change was made, different corporations got better gimmicks to make up for the change at least. Some being gimmicks from the first game, but made to be more substantial, some being disappointingly useless. Last but not least, one thing I will say is sniper rifles are much more usable in Borderlands 2 compared to Borderlands 1. The first review stated that sniper rifles in Borderlands 1 were horribly slow unless they were semi-auto. This is no longer the case in Borderlands 2. In Borderlands 2, a bolt action is noticeably slower than a semi-auto, but nowhere near as slow as Borderlands 1 sniper rifles. They're usable against groups more effectively now. Semi-auto sniper rifles are nice, but not so superior over their slower brothers to make them straight up better. As well, there is now the addition of auto sniper rifles. Sniper rifles that fire so long as you hold down the trigger. I personally found them a little lackluster, but I also find them just fun to shoot.
If you hear screaming coming from the research labs, stop listening so hard.
All in all, the game improved over its predecessor. Borderlands 1 was fun, Borderlands 2 is improved fun. The changes made for the most part improve it, and while it is a little annoying to not see certain things return in their initial form, such as the Masher, which only appears as the legendary Maggie, the game is still a good game, and I would say a better experience over the previous game in the series.
There's so much to this game you can spend hours just talking about it if you choose to, from what's your favorite moment, to guns you picked up, to just special areas you found. 1 was good, but 2 took everything and made it so much better.
I noticed you haven't shot me in the face! Curious as to why! Maybe you're weighing the moral pros and cons, but let me assure you that— oh my god, shoot me in the goddamn face! What are you waiting for?